Well, hello, Fatia and Shumble, Getun, and others who may be interested in learning a little bit more about our access to finance strategy. This morning, we had a chance to sit down as a team, as a technical team, and look at what are we looking at now for access to external finance. So we were working on this strategy on COVID-19. We've kind of worked this and took a couple notes here. I'll quickly go over these, and then we'll jump right into the Excel document. As you can see here, our graduation is something we'll be struggling at, quite low numbers. Our loan guarantee fund is underspent. Number of people who have accessed loans, again, it's around 20%. And then our capacity building, we're actually doing quite well at. In fact, we're slightly overspent on that. But we also said that this year is going to be an interesting year because we're going to be dealing with not only the ongoing issues, that we've been facing, but also COVID-19 and the recent communal violence. We also highlighted that there are several places that we need to look at in terms of our graduation readiness concepts, and those are really focusing on things like completing the financial training, internal savings. Do we want to record number of people who have been referred to FSPs or just those who have received external financing? When putting together our project, over time, we had an implicit. We didn't ever clearly define our theory of change, but we did have some. And those were things like if we could increase people's culture of responsible borrowing by internal savings and lending, that would help us. If we came up with profitable business models, if we link financial service providers, address the behavior issues, and also give other support such as positive youth development, that we would see greater access to finance. We also assumed at the FSP level that if we provided a loan guarantee and good capacity building funds, that we would see an increase. However, there was a couple, if you will, shortfalls in our theories of change as we look at it. One is that outstanding debt continues to remain a barrier to varying degrees. But what we do know is that if households have outstanding debt, even if we've completed any of the household level activities, they're not eligible. We know that Oromia has not moved forward to any debt forgiveness, and it seems like the future PSNP continues to take a look at these same issues, but are not taking a look at the issue of household debt management. So what we agreed upon, the other one that we saw was oftentimes that there was livelihood recovery programming that were given out as soft loans. Those are turning out to be very problematic in terms of destroying people's credit history. So we said we'll continue. Our strategy is to continue doing the same, which is really focusing on the loan guarantee fund. But we did come up with some other ideas, and this is what we're going to look at on the Excel sheet. The idea of, do we want to provide any loan capital, or we can talk about that when we get to the Excel sheet. Do we want to figure out how we can address any issues such as collateral issues that youth, women, and disabled are facing? We really need to increase the geographical coverage of our financial service providers. We said this year, based on last year, we really saw very little uptake by different value chain actors such as agri dealers or cooperatives on doing value chain financing. We do want to include access to finance to also include our cash transfers, which was around 10 million BER. We talked a little about household debt management and came up with some ideas of continue to encouraging financial service providers to write off small outstanding debt loans, a possibility of a household debt subsidy to cover historical down loans, and also a loan on loan. So households that do have loans, outstanding loans, can at least access future loans. Then we also talked a little about the capacity building, making sure that we're clearly defining what is our commitments that we have. And we've also expanded the definition already to look at non-PSNP supported financial service providers and liability transfers. So as we move forward and look at our strategies, there's a couple things we want to look at. One is we really need to be very conscious in meeting our loan fund obligations. We need to really get any of our access to external finance up and going and hopefully completed by Q3 for the agricultural season next year. This will be our last big time to get money out to support our clients for access to loans. We also want to take a look at what's possible within the limited time that we have and bureaucracies that we know we may face. And we also do not want to rely on others to complete a task if we can do those internally. So I'd like to now move over to the Excel document, which I think is kind of a more interesting document as we look at it. So what we have here, and I'm going to send this over so people can look at it separate from the target parameters and everything that we're working on, is instead I kind of laid out what some of those look like. So for instance, we have a loan guarantee fund, accessible Cabela's. So this is the idea being is that we may provide ongoing support at the current rate to reach those. For underserved Cabela's, we may give them a higher percentage of loan guarantee fund. For underserved populations, such as youth or disabled, we may fully subsidize that through a loan guarantee, 100%, or even a loan grant. We need to recognize we have loans from non-LRO supported financial service providers. And then there was also talk about some youth entrepreneurship grants. You also see that we have livelihood transfers, PSMP, livelihood transfers, COVID-19, and value chain financing. So in this Excel sheet document I want to show you is that everything's kind of linked. And so these are the different kind of existing products that we have. Some ones that we want to come back and revisit that will be at no cost to us, such as loans for LRO, non-LRO supported financial service providers, and livelihood transfers, PSMP. But there'll be other ones that we've already completed, such as COVID-19, and some new interventions, such as coming up with different costing and reimbursables on different percentages for some of these. Or I guess these three here. So let's start here. Well, first of all, you're going to see two columns. But the two columns I have here is, you'll see this later on as we go through, is kind of FY20 target parameters and now FY21 target parameters. I've done that. I'm not sure I'm going to do this for the rest of the document, but this is the first time I've dug deep on our target parameter sheet, looking at these changes in fundamentals. So we may consider it, but let's use this for today's exercise. Well, there's a couple things that we should know. One is that we know the average household size that people are going to be looking at based historically is around 5,682 BRR, or equivalent of $260,000. That's what we had put down for the original proposal, and unless people feel strongly otherwise, I think we should probably keep to around that range. These are some of our options, but what I did was try to come down here and actually list out what are some of those. So let's say these are different financial service products. And let's also make the assumption that a household can only accept one of these. So in other words, they're going to get support through either the loan guarantee fund, which we'll be supporting but has different conditions on it. They can be accessing a loan from another financial service provider. We know that financial service providers don't provide loans if others are providing loans. But also we have the youth entrepreneurship grant. So I was just saying, let's assume that we can get around 50, maybe 60%, 70%, but let's say 55% right now of the households to access some type of external finance, as defined as external finance from a financial service provider or equivalent. We also have the cash transfers, PSMP. So as you can tell here, it's around 12% of our clients have access to livelihood transfers. Livelihood transfers for COVID-19 is around 31%. This is the 8,000 households, around 8,000 households we've supported to date. So what that does mean is, say around 55% of our households would receive access to credit, 43% would access it maybe through transfers, with some potential overlapping around those. For value chain financing, I would not suggest we set a target on that. We have not had a very positive response from the different value chain actors. You notice here that there's some of these here that start on column G. These are comments that I'm writing for this year. These are for previous years. Again, we'll come back and look at the formatting. So if we assume this to be the case, that we have 55% plus 43% that's going to be looking at it, that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Now, I do see I just have a little problem here. This is not a big deal. Let me correct this. This plus this plus this. Okay. All right. So this does not mean 98% of our households will receive some type of credit, but it does mean at least 55 plus 12 plus excluding these who may receive addition, we'll have a good portion of our households that should have access to credit if we expand access to external finance to agree to include these financial service providers, cash transfers, and others. You'll see here this is the number of clients that we actually have. We had projected as, if you will, number of livelihood group members and some rough estimates as we are looking at this. We'll come back and look at that and confirm that is the base number we want to look at, but everything is derived from there. So as you can see here is, it's 20% of that would give us that as our rough target. So if we change these will of course change as we go through. All right, well, this kind of serves as a general dashboard. What you probably see then is the next thing that kind of informs is this section above. What this is kind of provides us a little bit more details. So for instance, loan guarantee for accessible Cabela's, we're offering a 25% loan guarantee. But maybe for underserved Cabela's, we may want to increase that to really incentivize them to get out to the areas they're not covering. We believe one reason that we're showing low numbers of people accessing external finance is because those financial service providers have not moved into those areas. So it's not that we can't improve their operations, but even if we improve their operations in the areas they're working, we have huge swaths of area that are just being geographically excluded. So we may want to create that incentive. We may also want to think about coming out of the youth, women, and disability access to finance. We recognize that we may need to give further incentives to encourage including those groups. So in that case there, we may actually pay like 100% to cover that, which would be great. But 5% of the population we may cover. And then we've also talked about, again, there's this 100%, we may cover that. And then we also are looking at loans for non-LRO supported financial service providers, around 5%. Previously we said 18, we'll need to revisit that. That comes at no cost to us. And then we also talked about these youth entrepreneurial grants for self-employment. Again, something else we can talk about. That would probably be just best to be done as a grant, but we'll need to talk about more of that in detail. The livelihood transfers, as you can see here, this is based on the DIFSA livelihood transfers here. And then we also have the livelihood transfers for COVID-19. So you can go into more detail on this, but let's see how this looks like when we put it all together. When we put it all together, this is what becomes really interesting, is we now can say, well, number of households, loan guarantee fund, what percentage is that? How much are we expecting an individual or households to receive? You can see that, say, would be around 30 million per, which is quite a bit of amount of money there. Then we can go back here and look at the cash transfers. Those are all possibilities. Now, I do see there's a mathematical error. I'm going to come back to here because this is actually, as I look at it more carefully, is how much money they should be getting, but we, of course, only are supporting them in part. We're not providing the full amount. We're only providing 25%. So I need to come back and relook at this. And hopefully you'll see a revised version there. We also have this concept of household debt subsidies that we'll be looking at if we wish to do something around that. I've also kind of updated the conditional capacity building fund. I've already sent out an email asking us to get clarification on what does the partner have as commitments. And I think that would help us a lot. As you can see, and that based on that email, there's some slight differences between these numbers here. It shows in last May that they had an outstanding commitment of around 1.951 or had a commitment, but then we're seeing this number. So we need to better understand that. For the yellow sections, don't worry about, nor do you need to worry about this. So I'm going to get back to you in an email after making some of these corrections and let you know what we need to look at. Thank you very much.